Hi, nice to meet you. I am Sooknyung Ha, professor, the special design major, Sangmyeong University. My thesis topic is the characteristics of minimalism in Yoshio Taniguchi's museum. In the artistic sense, minimal implies the meanings of excluding decorations, refined images, and simple lines or plans. The beginning of the 20th century tended to be led by the modern movement, and by the end of the 60s, many other styles of architecture based on the ideologies of modernism were formed. As part of the modernism, a new art trend called minimalism emerged, and it was derived not only into indoor spaces, but also into various fields such as music, culture, movies, fashion, architecture, furniture, and design. Therefore, in this study, the characteristics of minimalism in art are analyzed in connection with the elements that make up the space centered of the museum designed by Yoshio Taniguchi. The analysis items are divided into the elements applied to the design, the connection of the space, and the characteristics of materials, based on which this study attempts to analyze the value of the space. The minimal architect Yoshio Taniguchi is his artisan considerations on the space in the exhibition. In 1997, the project that drew the greatest attention from the architectural world was the architectural design competitions of the Museum of Modern Art in New York, the Center of Modern Architecture and Contemporary Art. It was a difficult task that attracted the attentions of the world, as the extensions would be built right next to such a famous building, resulting in comparison and evaluation. Naturally, there was widespread speculation about the winner, but the final winner was this unexpected figure, Yoshio Taniguchi of Japan. MoMA selected 9 art museums among Yoshio Taniguchi's works to display as the first exhibitions to commemorate the reopening in 2004 after all works was complete. Appreciating architecture like work of art, visitors in the US and Europe who were well versed in design then learned why this Japanese architect, who is not well known in the Western world, was chosen by MoMA. His work went Beyond the refined and minimalist style of European designers and had a subtle oriental um, lyricism there. While the conflicting the concepts of business and rusticity flew through neat straight lines and curves, they had a deep meaning. To point to Yoshio Taniguchi's architectural philosophy. Yoshio Taniguchi had a close relationship with architecture in his background. His father, Yoshio Taniguchi, was a giant and Japanese architecture. However, Yoshio Taniguchi graduated from the Department of Mechanical Engineering, Keio University, choosing engineering over architecture. However, as he could not shake off the architectural interest that was transmitted through blood, eventually he changed his course and went to the United States in 1964, where he graduated from the Department of Architecture, Graduate School of Design in Harvard University. Later, he learned work from the Master of Modern Architecture, Walter Gropius, and then returned to Japan and worked for the studio of Japanese architecture master Genjo Tanke for 8 years. At the time, Yoshio Taniguchi learned the practice of architecture and the Japanese sensitivity of his mentor Genjo Tanke. While mentor Genjo Tanke overwhelms the 70s with exposed concrete buildings, modern interpretations of Japanese wooden structures, Taniguchi, who studies in the United States, pursued an architecture with modernity and universality with a more open attitude. He majored in the mechanical engineering and was awakened of the precise mechanical details, not just to pursuing the sophistication, but developing architecture to a level different from existing ideas by working openly with artists from other fields. Yoshio Taniguchi's are museums which are harmonies with works taking into account the moments and the emotions of visitors rather than pairing architectures themselves entail comfortable emotion and understanding with concise and neat design. He is an architect who consider how to show the works in the building better than how to show his architecture to museum visitors. 3.1 the case of his work. One of the cases, number 3, is the Museum for Modern Art. 3.1 Background of establishment. Since its establishment in 1939, MoMA has continuously attempted to create a space for collections, education, and relations. American architect Philip Johnson designed F.R.D. Bridge, Rockefeller, the Sculpture Garden and East Wing in 1964, and the Cedar Valley extended the exhibition space in 1984. In MoMA's extension design, Taniguchi conceived that a white box space, called a white cube, is a neutral space that have had the same way as the development of contemporary art. By creating the most minimal space, he attempted to build an art museum where the work is the main character, not the space anywhere in the museum. Taniguchi's plan, which utilized the long rectangular sides, provide a sense of opulence that was not seen in MoMA before, instead of a colorful sculptural structure. The exhibition's space was double and a large skylight was installed in the museum to bring natural light into the interior. In addition, major entrances were moved and large-scale research and educational buildings were newly built, taking into account the educational functions of the museum. Upon entering the museum, visitors can first see the beautiful scenery of the sculpture park, and the museum has an open atrium that shows the special exhibition themes of the galleries on each floor at a glance. In addition, through the organic connection between the sculpture park and its building, it was once again open to citizens. In addition, the real value of Yoshio Taniguchi's design is the MoMA has become a true symbol of New York with an architecture that visually that expresses New York City's kind of urban structure. Number 4, Candomon Museum of Photography. In this project, Taniguchi did not simply design the building, but even designed an artificial lake to maximize the effect of water in the building. It was to express the flow of the Mogami River to the Eastern Sea in architecture. The technique in which cube buildings of different sizes are connected by the single linear elements, and the space between them is empty and communicated with other spaces. That Taniguchi's network to in the subsequent design of the 1990s and 2000s was embodied in this museum of photography. In the vacant space between in the building is a beautiful courtyard that was collaboratively designed by sculptors Isamu Noguchi and landscape architecture Hiroshi Tashikara. This museum with the concepts that properly tried that water and land elements gives vitally to the fixedness of the architecture by letting the constantly changing light and shadow shine on the building of the museum, making it possible to me to find art created by nature every moment. Next project is Maragame Genichiro Inokuma Museum of Contemporary Art. It is an art museum in honor of Genichiro Inokuma. Genichiro Inokuma, a representative Japanese modern painter. When designing an art museum, one of the architect's big concerns was how to control the light that flows into the interior space. In the museum, Taniguchi erected marble walls in the front of the building, using them as a filter of light. In addition, while the walls were finished with marble, Inokuma's innocent, the sketches were engraved, and the deeply shaded from front, the portal frame blocks excessive sunlight and at the same time becomes a symbol of Taniguchi's architectural design. The straight staircase in front of the sketches wall is the device that gives the space a sense of depth, while providing circulations to the street up to Inokuma's exhibition room. In early 1990s, Taniguchi pursued a style recreating the space with Taniguchi pursued a style of creating space with elaborate horizontal and vertical divisions, and this museum became a decisive moment in completing such a style. The next project is the Gallery of Hiroshi Treasures at Tokyo National Museum. A distinctive element from the outside is the frame surrounding a glass box, a unique trademark of Taniguchi. It functions to visually connect to interior and exterior while controlling the excessive light entering in the building. This becomes a device like a proscenium of a performance hall that draw the attention of the inside visitors in the directions the architect intended. Upon entering the lobby, the light from above in minimalist space expressed a spatial sense with its subtle effect. I think this space shows the essence of Taniguchi's architecture. There is a wall that completely the transparent glass on one side and heavy stone on the other side, which is closed without a single window, and the details of various finishes seem to recreating the breathtaking Japanese craftsmanship in the modern times, and by exalting their precision to the limit. There is no way to overlook a single detail of the window frame, and the trace of elaborations are clear. The climax of Jiroushi is revealed when entering the exhibition space through a massive stone wall. The Buddhist saint and the Buddha statues in the exhibition hall are lined up to communicate with visitors as if they were born in this era, not in the past. The exact details of the exhibition display case are also elaborated enough to show the best work of Asian art. The conclusion is the characteristic of the minimalist space in Yoshio Taniguchi's work is that doubles the purity of the space by coloring the space with a purity of white and chromatic color. The using the restraint and the simple space, using simple and repetitive combinations of geometry, line, and shape, and using organic techniques that absorb the natural elements into the space. After all, the morphological motif of his minimalism architecture can be found in modernist truth of the West, but the philosophical motif and its development can be found in the view of nature of the East. This is only the harmony and holism of nature of the East is the best way of philosophically explain the geometry and restraint from minimalism. So it can be seen that the view of nature of the East and similarities with the concept of minimalism. Thank you very much.